Well, I want to start with a confession. You're probably going to be a little disappointed. I watch reality TV. Now, I get it. Reality shows aren't really reality. They're carefully edited to make the reality more interesting than the reality was. So reality isn't reality, but it's a better reality, so you'll like the reality that wasn't. I get that. But I still watch. Now, I don't watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I don't watch The Bachelor. I don't watch Dancing with the Stars because that's weird. But I like HGTV, especially Chip and Joanna. Yeah, I want them to come do my office. So there's some Chip and Joanna fans here. That's pretty awesome. But my favorite show is Survivor. I've watched every season. People scheme, lie, cheat, manipulate, form alliances, sell out their friends. It just reminds me of real life. And today we pick up the story of Daniel with a real-life episode of Survivor, Babylon Edition. It's an epic, surprising story. Let me set it up for you. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the kingdom of Judah, destroyed Jerusalem, took the strongest, brightest young men back to his palace in Babylon. They all stayed in the same palace, ate the same food, taught the same things. Nebuchadnezzar was watching to see which would emerge as the best of the best, the survivor. The prize was a high position working for the king, leading the captive kingdoms. If you won, you got to be part of the leadership team of the free world. And not only did you get prestige and money and power, but you could provide protection for your own people. The stakes were high. If you displeased the king, you didn't get voted out of the palace or out of Babylon. This king had a temper. If you crossed him, if you disobeyed his instructions or made him mad at you, he killed you. This is one contest no one wanted to lose. The captives stayed in the palace and were fed gourmet meals from the king's table. That presented a challenge for Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It's not that the food didn't look or smell good. It looked wonderful. But the Hebrews had a strict set of rules about what they were to eat and what they could avoid. The food from the king's table was in direct violation of their guidelines given by God. No doubt that was intentional on King Nebuchadnezzar's part. He knew what the Hebrew captives were allowed to eat. He wanted to break down their traditions and their beliefs so that he could become their object of worship, their God. All the captives had the same rules. The table was set. The food they weren't supposed to eat was set in front of them. It looked good and smelled good. But it was sin. Before you know it, everyone dug in. They were feasting at the table of the king. It was a difficult situation for Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. God didn't want them to starve, and all the other captives were eating. Everyone else was doing it. I think every parent has heard that excuse, everyone else is doing it. There's a standard response to that. We're taught it in parenting school. Every parent responds to everyone else is doing it by pausing and then saying, well, if everyone jumped off a cliff, would you jump too? It's just one of the things parents say. Students, you will too. And if you got a smart aleck kid, they respond yes, and then you ground them to teach them that. It's just, we all learn the same thing. But I wish only children and students gave that excuse. Unfortunately, many of you continue to use it. Well, I know the Bible says sex outside marriage is wrong, but really, everyone's doing it. Cheating on your taxes isn't sin. It's more like a game. They see how much they can get. I see how much I can keep. Everyone does that. Telling a little lie is not really a lie. It's not that big a deal. It's not like I hurt anyone. Allowing trash to enter my home on my TV screen or computer monitor, that may not be a good idea, but everyone else is watching it. I could go on and on. So could you. You have hundreds of examples where people made stupid mistakes or justified irrational behavior because everyone is doing it. Here's my question. Does the fact that everyone's doing it make it right? Does it make it acceptable? If not acceptable, does the fact that everyone's doing it make it where it's not really sin? I'm concerned. There appears to be a pattern. We are allowing the world and people around us to redefine right and wrong. Now, people have always adjusted their theology based on their experience, but now it seems they adjust theology based on relationship. They can't stand the thought of someone they love going to hell, so they redefine sin in order to hope them into heaven. Every soul matters to God doesn't mean that God ignores sin. We love people regardless of their sin, but that doesn't change the fact that sin is sin. I'm afraid sometimes we equate loving people with accepting sin. Instead of a solid, unchanging standard, God's word, we're instead subject to the shifting winds of culture. Over time, what we once regarded as sin, we come to accept, not because the Bible has changed, but because everyone's doing it. Eventually, we not only accept it, we join in. Again, not because the Bible has changed, but because more and more people are participating in that particular sin. And you say, Pastor Rod, you just need to face the facts. The world has changed. You're right, the world has changed. The challenge is the Bible has not changed. What's right is right. What's wrong is wrong, regardless of how many people are doing it. For Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, a lot was on the line. Every other captive had given in and was eating the food. In order to win, they needed to be strong. They needed to eat. From their story, we learn how to respond when everyone is doing it, and then God's response when you choose and stand for what's right. We pick up the story in Daniel chapter 1, verse 8. Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. Dictionary definition of resolve is to make a firm decision. Daniel decided, I know what God has told me. I know what's right. I don't care what everyone else is doing. I'm making a firm decision to obey God. That's the first thing. How do we respond when everyone else is doing it? Make the decision to do right. Obey God, follow truth. This is really important. Don't miss this. Decide before you're faced with the temptation. Decide right now, I won't cheat on my spouse. I won't have an affair. You say, Pastor Rod, I don't need to. There's not anyone on the horizon. I've never even considered that. Good. That's the best time to make the decision. Decide right now, I won't have sex outside marriage. That's why we talk in reality about sexual purity. Our students need to make the decision before temptation presents itself. I don't care if everyone else is doing it. You can stand for purity. Decide right now. Seems like every year when I talk about sex and reality, a parent of a 6th or 7th grader gets mad at me and says, well, my child's not ready to hear about sex. Well, that's the perfect time they need to hear. And if you don't think they're hearing it at school, you've got your head in the sand. Decide right now. I won't be a gossip. I won't listen to gossip. You say, but nobody's telling me anything. Good. That's the time to decide. Don't be a part of someone else's sin and dysfunctional relationship patterns. Don't be an enemy of God's kingdom and the church by attacking other believers with loose words and disobedience. Decide right now, I won't pollute my body with addictive substances. The best time to make that decision is before you're tempted. Decide now. I could go on and on. It's time that people who claim to be followers of Jesus start acting like it instead of letting culture affect their every decision. You don't have to be like everyone else. You don't have to do what everyone else does. You don't have to give in. Make a firm decision. Make it now. Then, when the moment of temptation comes, act on the decision you've already made. Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself. So this wasn't an act of rebellion on Daniel's part. He asked for permission. It was an act of humility and righteousness. The same heart that led Daniel to the right decision led him to the right attitude. His first response, the initial attitude was, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to do it the right way. When my older son, Tyler, now Pastor Tyler, was in 4th grade, his class at school was going to read a Harry Potter book. Now, before you think I'm going to go on a rant, before you get mad at me about Harry Potter, before you send me emails and t-shirts and whole dialogues and stuff, just save that. Just hear the story, okay? So Harry Potter fans, don't tune out. Tyler didn't like witches. He didn't want to read about them, even if it was supposed to be a harmless fantasy. Cindy and I listened to his thoughts, and we let him make his own decision. It was his first big decision on his own. Tyler decided he wouldn't read Harry Potter with his class, that for him it was wrong. We didn't picket the school. We didn't go to the media. We didn't have a fight. Cindy and I didn't even call the principal or call the teacher. We let Tyler handle it on his own. Tyler went to his teacher and said, I don't feel right about reading this. I've thought it over. I don't think it's right for me, and I don't want to be here while you read it. The teacher said, well, Tyler, if you're not going to read with the class, then we read the book. You'll have to sit in the hall by yourself. And Tyler said, okay, it's fine with me. I'll sit in the hall. He kept his attitude good. Now, you might laugh and say, Harry Potter, that was the big concern. I get that. But it was more than a book. Tyler learned a valuable lesson about standing for what he believed was right and doing it with the right attitude. It was training ground for a God-called leader and a future pastor. You know what? I'm afraid sometimes we get mad and want to fight without first just trying to do the right thing with the right attitude. We give Christianity a bad name because of our hostile attitude. Resolving to do right doesn't have to be a crusade. It doesn't have to be in your face. I'm going to do what's right. You're doing what's wrong. There's nothing you can do about it. When you have that attitude, your good decision comes across as arrogant and angry. Make the decision, but when you do, keep the right attitude. You don't have to be angry. Listen to me, you don't have to be a jerk to do right. You don't have to put other people down. You don't have to post angry rants on Facebook or unfriend everyone who disagrees with you, which is the most junior high immature thing I've ever seen adults do. And you actually announce you're going to be immature. If you disagree with me, prepare to be unfriended. Really? You only want friends that agree with you? You know what that's called? That's called a cult. Come on, do the right thing and do it with the right attitude. When you do the right thing with the right attitude, people will respect you for it even if they don't agree. Now, I'm not on a crusade against something today. If that's what you get out of this, you're not listening to me. I get tired of people who get upset at me for something I didn't say. If you're going to be mad at me, be mad for something I actually said. Here's what I am saying. Followers of Jesus should look and act different than everyone around them. It's time for us to affect culture instead of culture affecting us. Do what's right. And do it with the right attitude. Daniel probably expected a fight. It wasn't his words that persuaded the official. Instead, God caused the official to show favor and sympathy to Daniel. It's not coincidence. When you stand for right when everyone else is doing wrong, you find favor in unexpected places. Is it because you did right, or is it because God's helping you? Yes. When you do the right thing with the right attitude, God works with you. You'll enjoy his blessing, his approval, his favor when you refuse to follow the crowd and you instead stand for what's right. The official told Daniel I'm afraid. I'm afraid of my lord the king, who's assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. This guy had a problem. If he granted Daniel's request to eat a different diet, and Daniel and his friends didn't look as strong and healthy as the other captives, the king would be unhappy. This wasn't a reasonable king. When the official said he would have my head, he wasn't using a metaphor. He meant it literally, my head will be cut off. He wanted to grant Daniel's request, but he liked his head. It was a pretty significant risk. Daniel said to the guard whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, and Mishael, and Azariah, please, test us. Test us for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. And ladies and gentlemen, that takes courage. To only eat vegetables for 10 days. Remember, this is before it was popular to be a vegan. They didn't have Greek yogurt, stuff like that. This wasn't hummus and pita chips from Tzatziki's. This was broccoli, Brussels sprouts, which should be illegal, tomatoes, carrots, radishes, all stuff from the ground. You can have it. I mean, this is how you punish your kids. I remember growing up, my mom was like, if you don't eat your vegetables, you can't have a brownie. That's a tough choice. I got to know, does the brownie have icing on it? If it doesn't, I'll skip the veggies. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. It was a wise answer. No problem. Try it out for 10 days. See what happens, and then decide. When you stand for right, when you refuse to follow the crowd and instead honor God with your decision, God gives you wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to make right decisions. Wisdom is knowing what to say in a difficult circumstance. Wisdom is the ability to see what others don't see. Wisdom is good ideas from God. Daniel said, give us 10 days. See what happens. See how God honors us. It's a faith-filled statement. Everyone else was going to eat meat. They were going to have protein. They were going to have real food. Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were going to have water and vegetables for 10 days. Now, come on. Is there really going to be a difference in 10 days? How much result do you see from your diets in 10 days? Some of you don't ever make it 10 days. I've heard a lot of people resolve to do something and not follow through. Resolve isn't enough. Decisions have to make it to actions. When you begin acting on the right decision with the right attitude, God gives you boldness to follow through. Boldness is the student who decides to stand for sexual purity. Boldness is the student who doesn't go to the party. Boldness is the businessman who stands for integrity. Boldness is the young adult who refuses to drink. Boldness is the courage to speak up and shut down a gossip. Boldness says no. Boldness confronts wrong. Boldness believes in right and acts on right. Boldness says everyone else may be doing it, but not me. It's time for some bold followers of Jesus, men and women, families and students, to say, I don't care if everyone's doing it. I will not allow that to dictate my behavior. Instead, I'm going to stand for God. I'm going to do right. It's time for a revival of holiness in America, for people of God to look and act and talk different than people who don't follow him. Our words should be grace-filled. Our hearts should be free of prejudice and hate. Our hands should be open to those in need. Our mouths should be filled with words of encouragement and life and peace. So the official agreed to this. Daniel's plan, tested them for 10 days. The king's official listened to the kids saying, hey, I've got an idea. Trust me. Don't worry about your head being cut off. Only God can make that happen. When you stand alone, you're not standing alone. God the creator of the world, the one who loves you and died for you, stands with you. When you stand with God, you are not a minority. You may be the only one, but you're in the majority. God works with you, in you, around you, through you. And at the end of 10 days, only vegetables and water, which I've never made it 10 days, only vegetables and water. I'm not sure I've ever made it a day with only vegetables. I don't want to make it a day with only vegetables. I don't want to make it a meal with only vegetables. At the end of 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink, gave them veggies instead, and it worked. After only eating vegetables, they looked better, they were more nourished, stronger, more fit than all the other captives. God honored Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego because they obeyed him. When you stand for right and refuse to give in, God honors that obedience. When you stand alone against culture, and remember, you're not standing alone, you're not sacrificing, you're not giving up anything, you're gaining a reward from God. People reward their children based on obedience. You love to see your kids make the right choice. Students, if you want more spending money, try this. Obey. If you want more money, if you want a later curfew, if you want a new phone, if you want a Corvette, whatever you want. This is the magic secret that works with every parent ever created. Obey with the right attitude. It's amazing what they'll buy you. Blessing follows obedience. It works with parents. It works with God. God blesses and honors obedience. Why does tithing work? Giving God the first 10% of your income. That doesn't seem to make sense. Why do people enjoy God's blessing when they put God's first in their finances? That's not normal. It's not what everyone else does, but it's what God commands. And God honors obedience. That's his pattern. That's his promise. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them in, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned him, he found them 10 times better. Not just a little better, 10 times better than all the other guys. 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did what was right in spite of what everyone else was doing, and they won. They were the wisest. They were the smartest. They were filled with wisdom and with understanding. I say it often, right wins. It may not win every battle, but it always wins the war. Do right, honor God, obey God, stand against culture, refuse to give in to everyone else who's doing it. God honors right. And when you do right, God will give you the victory. Verse 21, and Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. And you say, wait a second, I thought God gave Daniel the victory. What kind of victory is that? Shouldn't this verse say, and the king let Daniel and his buddies go back to their homeland? It's not what happened. Daniel was captive for 70 years. Daniel faithfully served, even though his definition of victory might have been different than God's. You have to live in this world. You don't have a choice. But when you stand against the shifting tide of culture, when you stand for right, when you refuse to allow everyone else's doing it to govern your behavior, God will give you the courage to endure, to make it through life's struggles and trials. Amen. You'll stand when others fall. You'll go on when others give up. You will face life's challenges with joy and grace because God gives you confidence and courage. Some of you have found yourself captive to the everyone else is doing it argument. Maybe you've done some stupid things. You've sinned against God because you want to fit in with people around you. You've let culture make your decisions instead of acting on what's right. It's time to change. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, here it comes. Whole thing was a setup. He's got 12 minutes left, honey. He's about to tell us everything we're doing that's wrong. He's going to give us a list. Everything we can't do. He's going to make us throw away our TV, turn off our internet, quit going to movies, a whole bunch of other things. He's just mad about something. I knew he's going to tee off. He's been setting us up the whole service. That'd be fun. That's not me. Instead, I just want to ask, are you letting the world make your decisions for you? Or are you obeying God? Let me ask it another way. Are you currently doing something you used to think was sin? Are you currently excusing behavior that you used to know was wrong? Probably still is. You just got sucked into that way of thinking because everyone else is doing it. Come on, be different. Dare to be different. Dare to stand for right. Not in an angry way. Not in an arrogant way. We're not going to reach America by being mad. James said, the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. That's King James. Another version said, man's anger doesn't bring about God's desired results. We're not going to shout them to Jesus, but we can show them Jesus. We can show them a life that's different. It's time. I dare you. Be different. Lord, forgive us. Forgive us for allowing the creeping, changing standards of our culture to affect us. Lord, forgive us for redefining right and wrong, not based on the Bible, but based on what everyone else is doing or based on relationship. And help us to be different. Lord, I pray for people in this room and in the video venue and watching online who've fallen into this trap of pleasing people and going along with people instead of obeying you. We ask for your forgiveness. Lord, help us to be different.